Our series on God's provision and just different stories along the way that Pastor's been sharing with us about just the way God's been able to come through for his people as he promised. And that's kind of the key, is he usually foreshadows what he's going to do, and then it's just a matter of them having the faith in order to allow him to use them to let that goal, become into fruition and get accomplished. As we saw with Paul earlier on, he was on the other end of the spectrum. And then with Jonah, he was kind of like, God, no, I'm going to go do my own thing. As we know, when he decides and when he says something is going to get done, you better believe that it's going to get done, right? Today we're going to look at the old familiar, David and Goliath. And I want it to be interactive. So tell me a little bit. What do we learn in that story? Anybody? What's one thing that stands out? The one thing that most people reference? God's power through David. The slingshot. What else?
Goliath is a giant.
Goliath is a giant. Come on. What else? Faith. What else?
The mighty will fall.
The mighty will fall. What else? There's a lot. Come on. What else have we learned over the years, all the way from here to now?
The least of these will rise.
How tiny David was.
The least of these will rise.
Yes. Anything else?
And under any circumstances, God is the leader. That's our Lord.
Yes. Amen to that. So cool. I'm going to look a little bit and just kind of, it was cool for me because, again, we've heard the story a million times and we know how it ends. We know kind of where it starts. But there was a few pieces of it that I may have heard before, it never really registered. And now, I guess, being a little bit older, you kind of see it from a different perspective. And I want to kind of, at the end, we'll talk about the story, but at the end, I want to kind of look at the story from Goliath's perspective, from the Philistines' perspective. Because we know, David being the shepherd boy and all that stuff, we hear that side of the story often. But oftentimes I don't feel like we focus on what was going on the other side with Goliath and the Philistines. So Mike said that I was kind of cheating by doing this, but I just think that Louis Giglio, he emphasizes the point. As the young adults group, we went through this series called Goliath Must Fall. It's on the Bible app. If you ever get a chance, it's a 7-day series with some videos, some scripture, and a little bit of a Bible study there, a little devotion. So we went through this about a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago, and I actually was able to have a Wednesday night prayer meeting and talked a little bit about it. But Louis just does a really good job of just kind of opening up that perspective that I want to touch on today. And we'll share some videos and just get into a little bit of the word. I'm a storyteller, so I'm just going to start from the beginning and we'll get through it and see what God has to say about it, all right?
Who had on several occasions led his troops into battle. Why didn't he ever step up to fight Goliath? Certainly Goliath was a massive man. He's a giant after all. But Saul wasn't a wimp. He was a proven warrior. And as the king, Saul must have had the finest battle gear available. And we know that because he offers this armor to David, which is itself a bit telling about both of them. That Saul seemingly had everything he needed to fight a giant, but didn't. While David, who appeared like he was completely unequipped, took the little he had and stepped into the valley. It's a very backward situation, and may just be the backward situation that we need to fight our giant. Welcome to part 4 of Goliath Must Fall. The story of David and Goliath is not the only time the Philistines caused problems for the Israelites. If you rewind the story a bit, there's one battle where the two face off with each other, and the Philistines beat the Israelites pretty badly. So the Israelites regroup and they pull out the ark of the Lord. This terrifies the Philistines because they know there's something holy about the ark of the Lord. But then when they go to battle for a second time, the Philistines win again. This time killing 30,000 of the Israelite army. On top of that, they steal the ark of the Lord. You can imagine how demoralizing and humiliating that would have been for the nation of Israel. So by the time you get to David and Goliath, there's something that's been building there. This situation was bigger than just a 9-foot giant. And that's the case with a lot of giants. They come with a history. It's rarely the case that what we're dealing with is a one-time, one-place scenario. No, we're looking for someone who will avenge our past and liberate our future. Welcome to part 5 of Goliath Must Fall. Imagine standing in front of a lion, 300, 400 pounds, a lion that has a sheep in its mouth, in its teeth, in its grip. Imagine you being the shepherd and that's one of your sheep. There's a lion, a hungry lion right in front of you, and you don't have a gun, you don't have a knife, you don't have a tranquilizer. All you have is a big stick and your own 2 hands. How would you feel in that situation? Before David came face to face with Goliath, a 9-foot giant, he was already familiar with looking death in the face. He had fought a lion, he'd fought a bear, and he beat them both. But you gotta wonder, how's that possible? We know from the story that David wasn't very big, and he probably wasn't very strong, but he came out victorious. And that's good news for us. When we're face to face with the thing that wants to take us out, we've got to remember that there's something stronger, someone stronger, who's going to give us the victory. Welcome to part 6 of Goliath Must Fall.
So let's just see what Mark 8:34 through 35 have to say. And calling the crowd to him with his disciples, he said to them, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." And then we look at 1 Corinthians. "Therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, he would also provide the way of escape that you may be able to endure it." So we see, we'll go back to the beginning, right? We're trying to find out who the next king of Israel is going to be. Jesse, he's got 8 sons. Saul shows up. God's going to point out to him, hey, go over there. He's got a bunch of sons. I mean, think about his lineup. He's got, 7 set of muscles walking around, or 8 set of muscles. David's out with the shepherds, or as a shepherd with the sheep. Saul comes by, and human perspective, human logic tells us what? The oldest, the strongest, the brightest, that's who the next guy is going to be, right? That's just how we would assess the situation. I think any single one of us, just like Saul and Jesse thought, and so did Eliab. He's sitting there thinking like, wow, finally my turn. I've been waiting a long time for this. And one by one, they all step up, and what does he say to them? Nope, he's not the one. You can kind of see it on their face, like, what? Next guy up, nope, that's not the one. Next guy up, no, that's not the one. Eventually we get down to the 8th one. They're like, well, you got to have another son. He's like, yeah, but that's the little shepherd boy. He's out there, taking care of like the minimal stuff, just kind of bringing food to the sons, the older sons while they get tired, bringing a little bit of water, taking care of making sure the sheep and everything are good to go. That's where God was preparing the next king in that moment, in that situation, in those circumstances. So, it's interesting, as Louis alluded to, the fact that, you might find and see David being this, kind of unequipped, unprepared, physically not where he needs to be in order to go up against a giant like Goliath. But it wasn't as if God wasn't preparing him. Think about what you would have to encounter and deal with out by yourself, just tending the sheep. You got to have a lot of patience, for one, I would imagine. You got a lot of downtime, a lot of alone time, just to kind of think and be in your thoughts. Moments for God to just really inspire him through only the way God could. teaching him lessons. I don't know exactly how that went down, but somehow, some way, God was just peering into the heart and the core of who David was going to be. And on top of that, he was preparing him because he knew what? At some point, he was going to have to go up against this big giant. So what does he do in the meantime? He gives him this instinct to just protect, this instinct to be an overseer, right, of the sheep, which is kind of funny because the Lamb of God, we are what? And what David do against Goliath? He was just protecting some sheep. That's all he was doing, what he'd been doing, right? Coming to the defense of the sheep. The Valley of Elah, right, where this whole thing takes place. I had to do my research on that. I see exactly where that was on the map. Just a valley. Hill on this side, hill on this side. You've got the Israelites over here. You got the Philistines over here, or the Philistines, as he says, over here. Valley in the middle. 40 days, 40 nights. They're waking up hearing the same old thing. Goliath over there pounding all, the metal and stuff he had on. Just pounding it, taunting them. Which one of you guys going to step up, huh? Send somebody out here, Saul. You've got a whole group over there. Who's going to be brave enough? And it's funny that Goliath was the only one that was stepping up. Back in the day, one-on-one battles were not the norm, right? You ask yourself, why was it just him stepping up? Well, as he alluded to as well, this wasn't the first time these two sides had met. The Israelites, they had already taken 2 losses. And it's kind of interesting to me. So they're in the middle of getting their butts beat the first time. And it's kind of like, okay, we're in trouble here, boys. This is not looking good. What do? Hey, go grab that little pretty chest we got over there with the 10 Commandments in it. Bring that bad boy out. See if that scares them. Maybe it'll buy us some time. So they did. The covenant. They brought that out. They're like, Philistines are like, wait a minute. We know that thing's got some kind of holy powers or something of that nature. I don't know if we want to be messing with that. So they back off a little bit. Regroup. Israelites are over their game plan. All right, what are we going to do this time? How are we going to get these guys? We already know where they're going to attack us from. The Philistines are over there like, hey, we're going to keep the status quo. We were winning. Everything was going well. So they come back. Second time they meet, they fight again. Philistines win. Guess what they do this time? Hey, that Ark, the Covenant, we're taking it. We're going to take it with us. So again, demoralizing, right? The one thing that you had that was saving you, that you're holding on to, that's gone. Third time. They're so confident on that side, they're like, we'll just send our biggest cat. We'll just sit back here and watch the show. I don't know if they had popcorn back in the day. They say that in the Valley of Elah, they grow a lot of corn, so you never know. They might have been back there just popping some popcorn for 40 days, listening to Goliath just taunt these boys. I don't know. I'm just saying. And it's interesting, too, that it's a valley, right? Water goes through it. Sometimes it dries up. But for the most part, I forget the guy's name, but in the 19th century, they literally labeled the Valley of Elah as one of the most prosperous, crop-growing, lush, green, life-providing valleys, right? And in this instance, we're looking at it, in a sense, as Death Valley. So the complete opposite of what this place was designed, in a sense, to be. So I ask you, what are some of the Goliaths that you're looking at on a daily basis? What's across the valley from you? What's God preparing you for? You may not be looking at Goliath right now, but you got to start asking yourself these questions, because I don't think David was really thinking that one day he was going to be face to face with a 9-foot giant having to defend an army of God's people. A lot of times we seem to find ourselves struggling with the same thing over and over, and we look at the wrong side of it. It's like, man, I just can't overcome this. But maybe God's putting you through that to sharpen you up for something that you will face. So what is it? You may not know right now, but I bet if you start paying attention and noticing the little things that just seem to keep repeating themselves in your life, and asking God to show you and reveal those things to you, I bet he can start revealing some of these giants. And for some of us, we may already know what it is. Patience, that's a giant. Comfort, that's a giant. Forgiveness, anger, road rage, keep going. Jealousy, addiction. What was that? Hate. Gluttony. I mean, we all have something that's standing across the valley from us, and every single day we wake up just like Saul in the army did. Today's the day, baby. All right, boys, get your mind right. We're going to go take him down. And then here he comes, steps out on the other side. All right, who's stepping out? Who's stepping out? Let's see who's going to step up one at a time, or bring two, it doesn't matter. And all of a sudden, that whole rah-rah chant that Saul was spitting over there, they're like, you know what, let's just game plan again. Let's regroup. I'm not too sure. And isn't that kind of what happens? I've been there. Like, today's the day I'm going to overcome this in my life. Or today's the day I'm going to get back in the gym. Nah, you know what? Let's start on Monday. Monday is a good one. Fresh week. Let's start at the beginning of the week. Thanksgiving's coming up. Let's wait after Thanksgiving. No, but then I'm going to family reunion for Christmas, and I already know Grandma brings the cookies and the pies and stuff. Let's just wait. Beginning of the year, right? That's the day everybody shows up to the gym. New Year's resolution, baby. I'll be there. Trust me, I'll be there. Do we keep that going? No, I mean, it's hard, right? It's hard. Every day, 40 days straight, they're listening to this guy just bark at him. No one's willing to step up. Fear, anger, anxiety. It could be rejection. Like I said, it could be addiction. But the beauty of it all, we know that if we have that relationship, as he promised to them, the reason why we're seeing this battle in the first place is because God said way back when, he said, the land that the Philistines are occupying, guys, that's yours. And it will be yours. So what's that foreshadowing? At some point, they've got to go, and we're moving in. Either we go and knock on the door and say, hey guys, so next week, you guys are getting evicted, we're stepping in. And they just, out of the kindness of their heart, pack their bags and they leave. We take over, or there's going to be some kind of fight. Right? The story says they fought, I think, 7 times. David and Goliath was kind of that turning point where things started rolling in the Israelites' favor. Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. It goes back to the same point. We may not get it in the moment. We may not understand, but if we're constantly asking God to reveal to us, to open our minds, to give us his perspective, to touch our hearts, to give us that discernment, he's going to provide that. And a lot of times, too, we feel like if God doesn't show up in a David-like way in our lives, then he's not working. And that's not the case. A lot of times we feel like, okay, God, I've been praying about this for X amount of time, and I don't see any change. I don't see any different. But guess what? I'm going to take matters into my own hands. We pull it right away from him. We got to just know and trust that he's got a plan and he has promised, and when he promises, he delivers. He's going to take care of those giants for us. Yeah, he used David, but David didn't do that. It was the fact that David had bold faith that God was able to do that through him. I want to touch on Eliab a little bit, right? Because what happens? David shows up to camp, probably bringing them some food, a little Dasani, Gatorade, electrolytes, grilled chicken, maybe fried chicken. So he's showing up just to bring them some food and stuff, and then across he hears Goliath just running his mouth, and here's old David, right? he gets angry. And the Bible tells us there's a season and a time for all that. It's okay to have a little bit of anger. Right? David is looking at this and saying, you're disrespecting God's people. You're disrespecting my Lord, my God. And he's had examples, a lion and a bear. I don't think I'd be doubting God if he gave me the power to defeat those two. He's probably looking right across there and looking at Goliath and hearing him say all this. And I bet that built up anger and rage, that adrenaline came across David. And he's like, you know what? If y'all aren't going to step up, I've seen a lot worse. I've actually taken down something that'll take him down. Let me at him. Eliab's here looking at David like, who do you think you are, right? He's angry because he's not the one in line to be the next king. His anger is built up, and a lot of times we harness some anger, some resentment, don't we? We fester in it, don't we? Some grudges, maybe? A little bit of that, where we're going through our lives and we're holding on to what so-and-so said 5 years ago, and we're bitter about it. Who's that affecting? The person that said it or you that's carrying that around? Eliab's sitting here trying to focus on the battle. David comes. He's now distracted. He's worried about the fact that he's not the next in line. David goes, you know what? That's fine. I'm going to go out there and take care of this. Because I'm going to go defend God's word. I'm going to go defend God's people. I'm going to go defend the covenant. What are y'all worried about? Where's your faith? So just be mindful that you don't find yourself in a situation like Eliab where you're not allowing God to do what he needs to do because you're harnessing something that's irrelevant. It's not your call, Eliab. This isn't against you. It's not personal. I've had a plan, and I'm going to see my plan through, and David is a part of it. It is what it is. So that comfort thing, right? Now let's flip the script. We look at the other side. David starts suiting up. He realizes, you know what? I don't need all that. I've got my little sling. I'm going to go down here in the little river, find me some rocks. How big were these things, do you know? Because I've always thought of river rock, right? I'm thinking one of those that I used to go out there and skip 16 times. Me and Jake have had a couple competitions. I think I won those, don't lie. But no, how big do you think these were? The Bible says that these rocks were the size of tennis balls. What? A tennis ball? That's got to be a mighty sling, doesn't it? And imagine a tennis ball coming at you from across, hitting you right in the head. No wonder this guy went down, because I always thought that a 9-foot giant gets hit by a pebble in the side of the head and that kills him. Really? But no, you're talking about a tennis ball? Yeah, that'll get you. I promise you that'll get you. So we look at the other side of this thing, right? What's going on in Goliath's heart?
He's prideful.
Prideful, what does it say? Pride comes before the fall. Right? And it's interesting too, we look at how this all, so God's got a sense of humor. He's a little bit funny with the way he goes about doing this stuff, right? Because in the Torah, which I had to learn about, Torah theology, it was the law of God that was revealed to Moses, and that's kind of what they abided by. David knew this stuff. They studied this stuff. It's the first 5 books of Hebrew. So in the Torah, what happens is when Goliath is out there cursing at God's people, it was kind of foreshadowing to them, the people that knew the Torah and were reading this or hearing this. If you do that, based on what the Torah said, when you cursed the son of Abraham, you were bringing down the wrath of God and a curse upon yourself. So David's probably sitting here thinking like, that's not good. That ain't very smart, you know, which is kind of favorable for them. Second thing, he starts blaspheming the God of Israel. Well, guess what happens when you do that in their time? If you were ever accused of doing that and found guilty, what do you think the punishment was? You're stoned to death. How ironic that this guy picked up a tennis ball sized rock and stoned him one time. That's all it took. Those were the laws, and God used the law to bring down this giant. Literally, word for word, stoned to death. But it only took one. So yeah, there's a little bit of pride going on there, right? What does Proverbs 16:18 say? Is that what it was? Yeah. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. They send one guy out there. We just need one to knock out all the Israelites. So then the other question is, what's going on with the Philistines? What's going on in their heart? Where were all their eggs? In that Goliath basket, wasn't it? They didn't need anything else. They didn't need to have a plan B because they're not taking our guy out. Look at him. And just in comparison, I mean, he had on a bronze helmet, right? Obviously, wasn't covering his whole head, but we know that for the most part, it was giving him some head protection. Whereas most soldiers back in the day, they said had feather dress on their head, wearing cloth. Some of those little straps that go all the way up. I see ladies wearing them now with them big boots and stuff. But you've seen the movie too. They had on skirts and cloth and little wrappy things on their calf muscles and a feathered headdress. While you look across, there's a 9-foot giant wearing a bronze metal helmet looking thing, breastplate all the way down. They said it was kind of like fish scale breastplate type thing, and it covered all the way down to his knees. Just the stuff on his chest, his trunk, the stuff that was protecting his trunk was 126 pounds. Now you're 9 foot tall, probably a little bit built out, 126 pounds hanging on you with this big metal helmet and stuff covering your knees. First of all, from an athletic standpoint, you're not going to be very agile in that. Not at all. So that tells me, the other thing is Goliath was expecting a one-on-one up close confrontation. He had probably a sword or something, right? He's thinking, someone comes close and I swing this thing one time, it's over. Right? But David on the other side, he's like, nah, brother. Nah, not me. I'm not getting that close. Watch this. He just starts warming that bad boy up. But it tells me that Philistines, they were a little bit arrogant too, weren't they? I doubt they had their gear on, ready to go to battle. They're 2-0. They're 2-0 right now. What do they got to worry about? Don't we get sometimes we all find ourselves in that place too? You know, where we're kind of like, hey, things have been going pretty good. Really have no cares in the world. I'm hanging out. I'm doing well. That doesn't affect me. Then what happens? Right? So just that fine line of having that humbleness, not allowing yourself to get a little bit too up here, right? James 1:19, it says we're to be what? Anybody know? Know this, my beloved brother, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. So David, as he's going through this in his head, I said he's got a lot of anger built up, but his anger is coming and channeled from a place of love, a place of protection, a place of understanding that in this moment, someone's got to step up to the plate. Someone's got to defend what's right. Someone's got to defend his God and his people. And again, he's a shepherd. God's been preparing him as a shepherd to protect these sheep, to understand what it is to care and nurture after something, to have that instinct to know when to attack and when not to attack. Sometimes we get so enraged that we lose. People say I blacked out, whatever the case may be. I was just so angry I couldn't think straight. Right? When you're in the heat of the battle, when you're in that moment, that's when you got to have the clearest of thinking. And I think David is an example of that right here. You can't tell me he wasn't scared a little bit. But he stepped out. It was that bold faith. It was that courage to know, despite the situation, despite the circumstances, despite what the bank account says, despite what the doctor said, despite the fact that, you know what, I'm not even in the lineup. I'm going to step up and be an example because I know at the end of the day, who's standing behind me can conquer anything that the devil tries to throw at me. Even a 9-foot giant, even a little cancer, even a little rejection at work or in a relationship. God's got your back. God's going to be there. He promised that. Believe it. If he says it, he's going to do it. Example after example, David and Goliath is just another one of those. And David was the only one out of the entire army of all the people that knew that that was their land in the first place. What do we do as little kids? When someone picks up your toy, my niece does it sometimes. Mine. That's your land. What are you waiting for? Go take it. What's the land that God promised you in this world, in this life right now? What's he telling you to go take? A lot of times we don't get the stuff that we want because what? We don't have the guts or the courage or the faith to get up and just go do it. I'm speaking to myself here. Don't doubt. He's already promised the victory. We know how the story ends. This one in particular, and we know how this story of life ends. We're on the winning side, folks. Don't know if you remember that, but we're on the winning side of this thing. I think it's time for us to take a little step of faith and start having a little more courage and actually going after some of the things that we said we're going to go after, doing some of the things we said we're going to do, finding some of the promises that God's made to us and holding him accountable to them. There's nothing wrong with that. Time and time again, we see it in the Bible where they tell God, hey, God, don't forget what you said to your people, and I'm one of them. So where's my love? It's about bold faith. That's what this story is about. Bold faith, and on the other side of it is just a little bit of too much pride. Clash of worldviews. One side, praising God. The other side, doing kind of what they want to do. David was prepared. So are we. God's given you everything you need. You just got to seek it. Find it. Ask him for it. Ask and thou shalt receive. But what? You got to believe. Again, the only person that believed he was going to be able to do it was David. Again, time and time again, whenever people step up in faith and remind God of his promise, and they go and they do, he provides. Again, what are some of your giants? What are you looking at across the valley today? What's God asking you to step up and confront? Get a plan of action. Find your slingshot. Get your tennis ball rocks this week and start learning how to swing that thing. Because whatever that giant is, we now know we can beat it. And it just takes one. We know that too. It just takes one. Find out what that giant is. You may already know. Harness that. Believe that. Believe in you. Because we know who stands behind us. Amen.